There is an unspoken rule in our culture that if you love someone deeply enough, that love will generate an infinite supply of energy, that sheer willpower alone can indefinitely sustain another human's life. But if you are managing the life of a parent with failing health, a spouse with a chronic illness, or navigating the sandwich generation, where you're caring for aging parents and young children at once, you know that willpower has its limits. The weight builds slowly. It is the endless appointments, the strict medication schedules, and the nights spent sleeping with one ear open. Your brain gets locked in a state of constant hypervigilance for months on end. Eventually, a jarring psychological disconnect emerges. You wake up and find yourself dreading the routine caretaking tasks you once did willingly. Then come the symptoms that feel shameful to talk about out loud. You might feel intense guilt whenever you take even an hour for yourself, and a creeping resentment toward the person you are trying to help. That mental friction creates a dark psychological vacuum, usually forcing the caregiver to ask themselves a damaging question: does feeling this way make me a bad person? This scale model illustrates the load-to-capacity deficit. These feelings aren't a failure of empathy. They're the result of an equation that no longer balances. As variables multiply, medication schedules, physical lifting, administrative tasks, and absorbing another's fear, the scale physically breaks. When you try to balance that equation by yourself, you are attempting to carry a burden meant for an entire village with only one set of hands. When the required load permanently exceeds what a single person can carry, the system eventually breaks. When that collapse happens, it manifests in the human body in distinct, measurable ways. The first is caregiver burnout, which refers to the logistical and physical toll placed on the body over time. You can recognize this burnout by its physical markers: an exhaustion sleep doesn't fix, sudden changes in appetite, and getting sick much more often. This diagram highlights a second, related condition. The right circle represents compassion fatigue, the emotional cost of caregiving. Over years of absorbing another's pain, your empathy reserves erode, expanding until you are left with emotional numbness toward the person you're caring for. Beyond the physical and emotional toll, there's a third factor: the way burnout and fatigue often overlap with or even hide clinical depression. Distinguishing between these three conditions is medically necessary, as each one requires a different approach to treatment. To manage this, we have to reframe caregiving. It is a structural system that requires active external management. Building a sustainable infrastructure starts with aggressive respite planning, designating when you step away, and establishing hard interpersonal boundaries. It also requires grief processing. You have to mourn the version of the relationship that changed due to illness or age. You cannot do this structural work while you are actively carrying the load. A caregiver must have a designated time and place to set the weight down. Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC, provides that space. For an hour a week, you can put the load down and build a sustainable plan with a licensed clinician. Because it is 100% telehealth, the logistical barrier is removed. You don't have to add another drive to your schedule, and you don't have to leave the person you're caring for. This chart breaks down the financial side of CHC services. If you have Medicaid, there is a $0 copay. For most commercial insurance plans, sessions run between $10 and $40. Working with a therapist is a practical step toward ensuring that both the care and the caregiver remain sustainable.